So, hi again, everyone. Without any transition, we are going from smart cities towards another very interesting topics. I'm very pleased to be moderating this panel about successful relationships between startups and corporates. We used to say you won't get fired for choosing IBM. Will you now not get fired for choosing startup solutions or even get promoted? That's a good starting point. We have an amazing real-life business case today with cutting-edge technology being used by a wide corporate and being accelerated by a consulting firm. So I'm very, very, again, happy to be discussing. First, to get started, maybe if you can introduce yourself and your company.
Okay, I'll start. I'm Lucia Sinapi Thomas. I'm leading Capgemini Ventures, which is the unit in the Capgemini group in charge of the relations with startup ecosystem enablement, because of course we have close to 300,000 geeks that work with startups on the field.
So my name is Frank. I'm heading the open innovation activities at AXA Group within a structure called AXA Next, preparing the future of AXA. So it consists basically into sourcing the best tech player startups to form strategic partnership and scale initiative from a country to another.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Damien. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of Zelros. And basically, Zelros, we are a software editor specialized in artificial intelligence for the insurance industry. And within the insurance industry, we are even more focused on optimizing distribution-related topics. Our goal is to invent insurance distribution of the future with our clients and with our partners, like Capgemini.
Thank you. So first chapter of the story. How did you meet, and what was the trigger for the collaboration? First between AXA and Zelros, and then same for Capgemini and Zelros. Frank, if you can start.
Yeah, I think first we have to identify where we need the help of companies outside of AXA, and then match this with the right startups and enablers. So it was quite easy to when we are working on improving the customer satisfaction, improving the life of our physical distributors, to match with AI, and then to match with Zelros. Zelros is also born, I would say, within AXA. You have a former data scientist that created of AXA that created Zelros. So we know each other for quite a long now. We know them well, and they know us well. That is triggering an easiest, I would say, cooperation.
Okay, so your employees can become entrepreneurs and respond to very critical business needs and on the field solution. Lucia, how did you hear first about Zelros?
So in Capgemini, it happens that we have a very large insurance footprint, and when the business realized that there was the Zelros solution, especially the American part was very interested, because we saw in Zelros something very new, innovative, that was addressing something that installed players were not. They are more on the ops, and Zelros, as Damien said, is targeting distribution with the notion of augmented sales rep, leveraging data and artificial intelligence. And this is something that was in demand. So we looked into that with a lot of enthusiasm. In parallel, it happens that we took minority tickets beginning of the year through our fund, Isaïe Cap Venture. But I must say we have a dual approach. Perspective number one at Ventures is supporting business development, and second comes the investment part.
And you have a very innovative way, I believe, of developing venture capital. Maybe you want to say a quick word on how Capgemini Ventures was born and how it is structured to back this kind of partnership.
Sure. So Capgemini Ventures has two legs. One is a fund in partnership with Isai, which has a very specific feature of, I would say, combining both the power of Capgemini from a business standpoint. So we focus on the business part, and we invest, and of course, Isai does its role of a traditional VC, and we invest at the conjunction of business interest for Capgemini and VC standards.
It's very, very interesting because to build a success story, you need talent, capital, and business. And bringing venture capital with a group like Capgemini, I think is fostering that very greatly. So congrats. There are thousands and thousands of companies out there. How do you pick the right one? How did you identify Zelros versus other solution in a crowded environment, and how can we ensure that corporates bet on the right solution? Franck, maybe?
Yeah, so we have developed our own internal, I would say, scouting and capacities across the globe. We have entities that are also doing screening of insurtech, fintech, and health tech companies. We have our own selection process to top the priorities that we have according to our business needs. We are also working with Capgemini in many countries. So when we have identified those companies, and notably we have leveraged at some point the knowledge that we have in those companies that are what I call AXA babies, because you have Zelros, but you have also Shift Technologies. We are working in 25 countries with Shift. You have Descartes Underwriting, you have Condev recently, etc. Accurate, exactly. So there are a lot of AXA babies where it's easier to work together.
Okay, so probably strategic topics that you can assess faster than others. And maybe Damien, on your side, on your entrepreneur side, how do you make yourself visible for corporates and people that can accelerate your business? Do you have any special recipe?
Well, I will take a sentence, a quote from Steve Jobs. I guess you have to show off. So basically, that's what I do today. We are very much specialized 100% in the insurance industry. So at a point, you have to create a new network within this industry. We are in core B2B type of software, which means that you have to understand very well the business of your customers. So we recruited former insurers coming from AXA sometimes, coming from other insurance players as well. And yes, once you have, the first difficult things is to have the first customers. Once you have, signed the first customer, then the second one is easier, the third is even more easier, and then it's a word of mouth. It starts, spreading out.
Okay, and potentially also on Capgemini side, you have a lot of employees and a lot of very rich deal flow. So how do you manage to select the best?
So first, we're not prejudiced on the source of the scouting. It comes from the VC industry, our employees, our partners. The difficulty here is, and we have the specialty of Capgemini, because we're a consulting and systems integration activity, is that we have a point of view. We have a point of view on technology evolution. We have a point of view on solutions most suited to a specific client need. That's exactly what they expect from us. So that's on the, I would say, market intelligence side. But when it comes to startup, the issue is the high volume and the highly evolutive aspect of the ecosystem. So just on fintechs, I think the last world report was in 2020 was counting 33,000 worldwide. So how do you want to select and make the best bet? And it's not only about investment, it's about collaboration for us, adoption for our clients. That's also an operational risk. So on top of the market intelligence of our experts, of course, that's the role of venture. What we're doing with my team is that we're helping the business teams ensure that the sourcing is exhaustive. Not falling into the anecdotal choice can be an issue because everybody knows in our group has a cousin who has a friend who has launched a startup, and of course it's the best startup in the world. So one part is this, so we try to objectivize and have a global view. The second part is assessment, qualification. So there, again, we're lucky because we have our own network of qualified experts, both for technology and functional aspects. We totally manage the process. It's processed, it's tracked, etc. So we try to industrialize it. And the last part, which is not the less important, is then how do you reach the last mile of collaboration? You need to contractualize. Not as an easy task, you know, when having that part addressed with large corporations. We've simplified the frameworks, etc., and we ensure some supervision of how the performance goes, the collaboration goes over time, which is also important. So it's an enabling function. It's important to have these two aspects to support. It's a lot of work for operations. They are not used to that because in a large systems integrator like us, we are industrialized. So we are used to work with large players, with large resources, and collaborating with startup is not so easy. It's not easy for us. It's not easy for our clients, and this is why we've been jointly with Village by Crédit Agricole. We've been elaborating a charter of the best practices for collaboration between startups and large groups. That has been finalized just before the summer. And I urge you, I think we had
the link
there, so you can access it. It's open to each of you, and we really recommend that at the inception of a relationship with any client, that startup use it, and it's signed on both sides. It's worth what it's worth. Of course, I'm sure that it can be fine-tuned, but we found it's a good basis to ensure that there is perfect understanding on both sides.
And it's a very, very interesting document, completely open sourced, with a lot of hours of work behind. So have a look. I think you'll find some interesting things. And building on that, so we can see how different worlds can be corporate and startup. You almost have different time frame. And you have, when you are a startupper, sometimes you have a few months cash runway when a large corporate will last forever. And you some of the time have to sell twice. Once you have convinced the business need, then it's about the procurement that you have to convince that your balance sheet is not so tricky or whatever. So how do you, maybe on AXA side, how do you rethink your organization to avoid this cultural shock, I would say?
Yeah, definitely. We do not work at the same speed, and speed is a challenge between corporate and startups. So once the selection is done, you have to involve as soon as possible people like would be at some point trying or could potentially slow down the process of this cooperation. I mean, IT teams, compliance, legal team, etc. So as soon as possible, once the selection is done, you have to involve all those people to align interests into the cooperation. And again, we're trying to scale initiatives from a country to another. So our main goal by doing this involvement of all the different parties into the project is to prioritization of the process, right, of the project. So it means that this needs to be a priority number one in the strategic plan of the entity in order to accelerate innovation, etc. So once this is done, then you can scale easier in other countries, and that's what we are trying to cook right now.
Okay, so a 360 project management approach with every function ready to test and then potentially deploy. Maybe on your side, Damien, how did you evolve or did you change anything in your go-to-market to make it more efficient?
I think I could speak about this topic, you know, till late in the night. No, first of all, I think that it is useless to say to your corporate partner, please hurry up, because, you know, they have been there, you know, for hundreds of years. So, and yourself, you've been here like for a couple of years. It's useless. So, of course, we have to adapt when we are a startup, and we have to get to know, to understand how this type of company operates. They have workflows, they have approval process, so I mean, they won't change it for you. They will maybe adjust it a bit, but they won't change it for you. What I like to emphasize is more on security, and that was one of, let's say, our big job, and kudos to my CTO. He's not here, but if it is, you know, recorded, kudos to my CTO, because from the very beginning, if you want to work with a big corporate like AXA, you know, you have to be at the highest standard in terms of security. We deal with data, we deal with AI, so you can imagine we've gone through, you know, endless security reviews. We've got through multiple pen tests. So you have to make sure that your technology and your processes and your organizations are up to these high standards. So, and it comes at the end of the day as well to some very concrete stuff like getting ISO 27001 certified. So that would be one of my advice. I mean, invest in security, because it's a must-have. You won't be able to operate without this.
Okay, and when you want to go from the successful test, once past the security issue that you are just describing, and you want to scale, what can be the role of Capgemini, for example, to go from one country to 24 more in the case of some other partners?
Well, Capgemini mission was and remains to be the bridge between business and technology. So that's still the case when it comes to startups. And this Zelros is a very good example. You know, AXA didn't wait for Capgemini to introduce Zelros because it's self-explanatory and pretty plug and play, like many core solutions in a SaaS mode, right? So what's the role of a Capgemini? Capgemini understands and masters the complexity of the IT estate of the clients, as well as the complexity of their organization. So beyond the first phase of getting to know a point solution, the question of adoption at scale very quickly comes to, okay, how do I interface? How do I get the best benefits out of it? What does it mean in terms of how can I rationalize? And of course, access to data for sure. What is the domino effect on the organization in terms of change? And this is a big change, you know, augmented sales rep. There is a very big change management aspect as part of that. That very often can trigger resistance to adoption. And on the IT front, it's a question of adoption at scale. So what Capgemini can bring first is help large clients adopt startup solutions at scale. Second, and that's one aspect which is interesting on the Zelros case, I told you that we have a very big insurance franchise in the States, and in particular, a large installed base of Guidewire insurance core solution. So we've been able to advise Damien and the team that if they were, in their roadmap, developing connectors with Guidewire was, of course, a key success factor for penetrating quickly, with help, our installed client base. So from that standpoint, again, I think it's a win-win, because it triggers some transformational and rationalization work for us, while helping the adoption. So we play the role of the growth accelerator for startups, which is great.
I think we have time for one last question, and maybe you just mentioned how Capgemini can help a collaboration to scale globally. What would be for each of you the three magic ingredients to ensure that going from a test, we are going from a sustainable long-term relationships?
Shall I start? Well, if I have to mention only one, I will, come back to our first tagline at Zelros when we started 6 years ago, which was "Stop proof of concept, start using data." And I think that was really the big reason of our first successes, meaning that when I mean proof of concept, I mean offline proof of concept, meaning this famous, fail fast, learn fast. Okay, but how do you do that? How do you do that? You do that if you go directly to real life. So if I had, my 2 cents, build a policy in your companies and say, no more offline POCs, real life. It could be, on, a limited scope, a limited number of users, a limited number of, line of products, but real life. And that's where, you will probably a bit fails in some aspects, but you will learn so much that you will improve and your further deployments will be successful.
Yeah, on my side, I would say the magic word is the connectors between our legacy system and what startups can provide on top of it. We need connectors. Actually, we were saying that we have to scale those initiatives, but actually it's frequently a question of replication of what has been done in a country to another, because in insurance business you have a couple of different legacy systems in each country, which means that there is no magic into connecting external world to our legacy. So definitely working with Capgemini, working with Guidewire and big tech players allow us to replicate, scale, duplicate, and really make a strong impact on the business from innovation, from outside of the company into customer satisfaction and for instance, distributors' easier life.
Okay. And Lucia, maybe?
I would add that maybe the magic formula is around enlarged ecosystem. Why? We heard from AXA that point solutions are really critical, but software editors are thinking the same way. They focus on their core and they rely on startups for a lot of them to complement their suite. So it's no more sufficient to work in bilateral partnerships. We need to understand each other's ecosystem and work that way. That's the way to success.
Okay, so we can see how a leap of faith is somehow critical. First, to have the corporate jumping into the swimming pool of a real-life test, then creating the bonds to match the legacy system, which will be here for long and which we have to accommodate with, and then building an entire ecosystem to not to be into silos and try to think big. I think we are just on time. Thank you so much for all your insights, and I hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.